ADMJ151. I'm actually having a little bit of trouble with the videos. This is the third time I've done this, so if I'm rushing, I apologize. It keeps cutting out on me. I just wanted to touch base with everybody, talk about our week's discussion. You guys are doing a really great job. There was some people who only did the discussion. They didn't respond to additional peers, and so they didn't get the full credit. Remember, in order to get the full 10 points, you have to do your discussion post, and then you have to respond to two completely different of your peers, some kind of response that is substantial. So, straight to the point then, determinate versus indeterminate sentencing. There was some heated debates. I saw that. It was good. Just make sure we're debating the issue, not the person. If we look at determinate sentencing, it's a determinate is a set amount of time. 5 years, you do a crime, you get 5 years, right? Where indeterminate sentencing is a range. It could be from 2 to 5 years. Now, these are I'm just giving examples. It can be any different time frame. There was some confusion, though, I think. People were talking about good time, or what we call earned time, for early release as only being part of determinate sentencing, and that's not necessarily the case. Good time is found in both determinate and indeterminate sentencing. You can get good time or earned time. Now, this is not the revolving door that we think of. That is something completely different. That's unfortunately, part of early release, or AB 109, Assembly Bill 109 that we have here in California, where we have to reduce the state population, and so they're letting out non-violent offenders. And that does create an idea of a revolving door, and as some of you guys correctly asserted, there's no sting anymore to a sentence. People say, oh, I'll be right back out on the streets. But that's a very small minority of offenders that have that high recidivism rate. For the most part, people who are incarcerated, they go, hey, I don't want to do that again. So both have the earned time. Now, the difference is that determinate sentencing does not have parole. Does not have parole. You have to do the time. You get 5 years, you do the 5 years minus any good time, and then you're released. You're not released on parole. Indeterminate sentencing does have an option for parole. The parole board will look at what you've done since you've been there. They decide if you are truly rehabilitated, if they feel you are truly rehabilitated, which of course is subjective, and there's no way to really know if someone is, as some of you guys pointed out, they play the game. And absolutely that's true, that does happen. But in order to be eligible for parole, you have to have finished the bottom side, the least amount of the range. So if you're given 2 to 5 years or 25 to life, you have to at least do that time. Minus any good or earned behavior, but you have to at least do that time. One thing I did see was people seem to be using parole and probation synonymously, and they're not. They're not synonymous. They're not the same thing. They're two completely different things. So if you look at probation, probation is at the county level. I know most of us in this online class, myself included, we live in Kern County. So if you were to get in trouble, if you were to get arrested, Kern County could, the courts could give you probation instead of time in jail or prison, and then you would meet with a probation officer. You would follow all the conditions of probation. Essentially, probation is what's referred to as a side door program. So we're going to give you a sentence, a punishment, but you're going to serve it out in town. You're going to serve it in the community. You don't necessarily have to be incarcerated. You're going to be in the community, but you have to follow all the rules, or we'll set you up for what's called a revocation hearing, and we will revoke your probation, and you will do that sentence time. Parole is something completely different. Now, parole is by the state, and it would be a parole officer that would decide, and a parole board would decide if you go on parole, and that's an early release. But you still have the rest of that sentence hanging over your head. So you're out in town, very similar to probation. You have to maintain a job. You have to pay fines. You have to go to meetings like AA or Narcotics Anonymous, if that is part of your parole. You have to stay away from other felons. But that's an early release. Two totally different things. I saw some statements where people said the probation officer will decide the parole. It doesn't work like that. Probation only deals with probation, which is in lieu of or instead of jail. Parole deals with parole, which is an early release from incarceration. So just a few things I wanted to clear up there. You guys are doing a good job. If you have questions, comments, or concerns, email me. Pretty good at getting back to you guys. There was some concern. People would do great, and I would respond to their posts and say, hey, you did a great job. and they would say, well, then why'd you only give me 8 out of 10 points? Well, that's because I wasn't done grading at the time. And remember, you get 5 points for your discussion question, then 2.5 points each for someone else's. So sometimes you may have an 8 and think, well, why didn't I get my full credit? I just haven't finished grading yet. But please email me, ask those questions so I can tell you, because sometimes some people didn't complete the assignment. They did theirs, but then they didn't respond to 2 other people. So at that time, if you email and say, why do I only have 5 points, I can say because you didn't complete the assignment. So I hope that helped clear it up. We'll do this as we go along through the weeks. I'll put up these videos kind of rehashing what we did. Your first quiz opened up today on the 19th, and it will be open till the 22nd. So make sure that you are getting on there, taking that quiz, and keeping up with the course. Other than that, I'll check in on you guys next week.